Hey everyone, today we're going to be telling you how to do well on the SAT. So, when I first started out, I scored a 1770, which is slightly above average on the SAT. And then I decided to take things into my own hands and I immersed myself in the process. And I'm here to tell you everything about it. So, the first thing I did was I messaged all the people who scored 2400 on the message boards out there on the internet, and I asked them how they achieved it. And I also asked a couple people in real life, and I messaged them. Some of them didn't reply back, but there's certain message boards out there focused on the SAT. One of them being collegeconfidential.com, and I just messaged all of them. It required a lot of digging and research, but I found them, and there was a little bit of variability, but I found that the main tenets that these people used to achieve their score. The first emphasis I want to make is on real administered tests versus the fake practice tests that a lot of these test prep companies put out. Princeton Review, Barron's, so forth. And I got so immersed in this that I would rush home every day and I would crank out like I would go through like two, sometimes three practice tests, and then I would review my answers. And I got to a point where I'd gone through over 100 practice tests from all different types of sources and test prep companies. And I have to tell you, the difference between the real administered tests and how the practice test companies put out their practice tests, there's almost an ocean of difference, especially on some companies. Some companies, I would say Barron's, they come decently close enough to the actual test, but some companies, cough cough, I'm not going to name it actually, their practice tests are so off. And I remember I went through at least 10 of them, and it took like at least half a month to do so. And then I tried the real administered test I found, and it was so different that I just realized that taking these fake practice tests based off, a simulation or what they thought that the real test would be like, it helped very little because the way they asked the questions and everything was so off base from these real tests that it was just a waste of time. So again, I went through a ton of tests and there's a huge emphasis. So here are the big tenets basically. Take real administered practice tests. Review your answers in depth, especially if they have answer explanations. Rinse and repeat. Keep doing this, and then memorize vocabulary words. And so those are the basic tenets, and there's more to it than that though. Vocabulary words is a huge thing too, because if you get the wrong vocab list, again, test prep companies, they throw out these weird ones. Barron's has like a 100,000 word list. That was a waste of freaking time. It pissed me off how much time I wasted trying to memorize that, realizing how fruitless it was when there's so many words. It's just like ridiculous. There are many better vocab lists that are much smaller and actually are more related to the actual test. So again, I recommend College Confidential because they actually went to extensively, some of the users, to like scientifically figure out which practice vocab lists and practice tests work best. But long story short, you want the real administered test released by the actual organization that actually conducts the test on the test dates. And so how do you find these? Well, they've released like this huge book of them. It has 6 practice tests, not a lot. They released 6 more via an online test program you can buy. And then every test date, they allow the test takers to buy the actual test for review purposes and so forth after they take the test. So that's like the huge source really, because a lot of people scan these as PDFs and they release them online. So in that way you can find dozens, and some people sell them online, some people trade them online. I don't know if it's legal, but I mean, that's what I heard. And then again, obviously there's a bunch of these fake practice tests from the test prep companies, and there's over 100 practice tests that you get from there, and some are better than others. So that's it in a nutshell. Now let's talk about tutoring and those test prep courses. Now they help, but I would say they're fairly BS. I took test prep courses and I was tutored. Let's start with the tutoring. It was BS. I'm not gonna lie. It was just BS. He was charging so much. I don't think he ever revealed how well he scored. And oh yeah, I forgot to reveal. So I got to a point where I scored the highest score I got was a 2170 on the SAT. And just so you know, the range from 2100 to 2400, it's a very, very marginal range. If you miss like one or two questions, that's the difference. So it's like precision. Like if you want to get 2400, you either have to get very lucky, or you're just so precise that you know that you got every question right. And it's a difference of one or two questions wrong or right. Um, and so anyhow, back to the story about the tutoring. For me, that tutoring, the tutor was just, you know, I felt he was peddling a lot of stuff. Like he would come in, and again, it was almost to the point where like at the time we were just so convinced because we were paying money for this and stuff, and it was often a lot of stuff like stuff that I'm pretty much telling you you have to do, but worse off. He would just say like, "Oh, memorize this vocabulary list," and yes, it was the Barron's list with thousands upon thousands of words that were like never going to be even used on the actual SAT, and almost impossible to memorize so many. And he was giving me these assignments like, do this, and like just take these practice tests. And then he'd come in, and all he would do would be like, well, did you do it? And then he would review the flashcards with me. He would test me on if I knew them, and then he would go on to just do a practice test while I was there. So he was pretty much sitting there while I did a practice test section, and then he would just use the answer explanations at the end of the book to reason out why I got this one wrong and why I didn't. So he was really just guiding my hand, and it was all just preposterous because it was just like, I mean, you could do all this yourself, and again, the direction wasn't that great. So, be wary of these people. And so, as for the test prep courses, fairly similar. They're reading a lot straight from these test prep booklets, and they're just like reading it out to you, and then they're saying, okay, now everyone take a practice test, and then afterwards they'll review it as a class and so forth. So it's, I guess, motivation for those who are just too lazy or can't have that push. But at the same time, it's just like, it can be very misguided or half-hearted, or they don't really know truly what they're doing. So I got to a point where I was at home, and again, another thing is timing it. So I would time it to make sure I could do it in the required time, and then I try and narrow down the time it took me to answer all the questions and get the highest score possible. And there's a bunch of small details that you can pick up just by reading a book, such as is it better to leave it blank or fill in something? The answer is to guess, unless of course you're just so far behind in your scoring in the 1700 range. Then you want to take your time and just really figure it out. And by guessing, I really mean like at least putting in an educated guess, not just a blind guess. But again, it's all in the test prep book. They actually map it out statistically, mathematically, why, if you just blindly guess and if you just leave it blank, there's really no difference. So the only difference comes when you start hitting the 2100 to 2400 range, where if you're not putting in an answer for every single question, you can't get a 2400. So there's just that. And so again, I'm trying to bottle this down all into a very quick video because there's more to it. And if you guys want an extensive video on it, maybe I'll do it in the future if this one gets enough demand. But that's it in a nutshell. And again, it took a lot of work for me. A lot of vocab word memorization is not as tough as you think. You don't need to memorize as many once you figure out the correct books to use. I recommend Direct Hits. It's a vocab book. There's 2 volumes, and in total it's only about 350 words, and it's been statistically proven to be like the highest correlated to actual words being tested on the SAT. And so that's it in a nutshell. And basically what I did was every day when I went home, I would take all these tests. And again, it was tough when you have annoying distractions, but I did what I did, and uh, I did that for a long time, every day after school, just cranking them out and reviewing my answers with the answer explanations and so forth, and sometimes trying to piece it together when they didn't have answer explanations. Sometimes you have to do it because you want a real administered test rather than these fake tests, but the real administered tests often don't come with answer explanations. So again, I used the message boards if I really didn't understand why this was the answer, and that's how I did it. And then I slowly cranked it through, and I pulled up my score for all the sections: writing, grammar, math, and reading comprehension. I would say for math and reading comprehension, the test prep books, the thick ones, helped a lot because they explain to you everything um, in terms of grammar rules and math rules that you need to know. And therefore, if I didn't read that and I just kept cranking out tests, I wouldn't have really learned to improve unless I mean, I technically could if I could figure out or piece together how to do this math problem. But the books helped a lot because they showed you, well, these are the math principles and grammar principles that you need. So that's it in a nutshell. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in my next video. Do well on the SAT. And again, it's not an overnight process. I worked very hard and went through a lot of practice tests. See ya.